The city lights of London blurred into streaks of gold and sapphire through the taxi window, mirroring the dizzying, brilliant rush Maya felt in her chest. It was a single, reckless night, a break from the crippling monotony of her life. She'd met him at a forgotten jazz club, drawn by the profound, almost painful sadness she saw in his intensely blue eyes, which contrasted sharply with his impeccable, expensive suit. He introduced himself simply as Elias, and for 4 stolen hours, they were 2 anonymous souls desperately seeking connection in the dark. Their conversation was electric, raw, stripping away the polite layers of daily life. The passion that followed in his penthouse flat felt less like a fling and more like a profound act of mutual surrender. Maya didn't even know his last name or what he did, only the warmth of his skin and the sincerity of his whispered words. In the pre-dawn hours, before the real world could intrude and ruin the perfection of their bubble, Maya slipped out. She left behind only a hastily scrawled note. "Thank you for the honesty." She needed to keep the memory perfect, untainted by the reality of separate lives. 6 weeks later, the world laughed at her attempt at perfection. Staring at the tiny, unmistakable confirmation on the stick resting on her bathroom counter, the whirlwind of Elias's eyes and their stolen night came crashing back with terrifying permanence. Her simple life, already stretched thin by financial worries, was about to change irrevocably. She tried briefly to find him, a search for a nameless man in a city of millions, but the jazz club owner didn't recognize the name, and the luxury building had no record of a tenant named Elias. The man, like the night, had vanished, leaving Maya with a profound and irreversible consequence. She was pregnant by a stranger she had loved for only 1 night. Months passed in a blur of morning sickness and calculated secrecy. The tiny, growing life inside Maya became her new purpose, pushing her to find better, more stable employment. Her modest administrative job wasn't going to cut it, not with a baby on the way. She needed corporate security, health benefits, and a wage that promised a future. She landed a role as an executive assistant at Meridian Technologies, a highly competitive firm specializing in bespoke security software. The interview process was grueling, but Maya's sharp mind and quiet competence won them over. She signed the contract, her heart thumping with a mix of triumph and terror. The job was perfect. The timing was disastrous. At almost 5 months, hiding the pregnancy was becoming a complex choreography of large blazers, cleverly draped scarves, and constantly sucking in her breath. Her first day was a masterclass in deflection. She navigated the sleek, glass-walled offices, avoiding close contact and keeping her desk piled high with strategically placed documents. The company culture was intense. All sharp suits, long hours, and relentless ambition. She learned she would be working directly under the CEO, a man who was reportedly a genius, ruthless, and highly private. "He's been traveling extensively for months," a fellow assistant whispered conspiratorially. "He only returned to the office last week. Just try to keep up." Maya nodded, grateful for the delay. Her current wardrobe strategy was sustainable for maybe another few weeks, tops. She told herself that a CEO of that magnitude would barely notice a junior administrative assistant. She focused on the task at hand, sorting the mountains of unopened mail on the CEO's imposing mahogany desk, ensuring her posture was straight and her blazer remained tightly buttoned over the gentle, undeniable curve of her body. The air in the CEO's private, glass-walled office was thick with anticipation. Maya had spent 3 hours organizing his digital files, waiting for the elusive boss to arrive for their first official meeting. She had been warned he was formidable, demanding absolute perfection. She was ready. She rehearsed her opening lines, concise, professional, and entirely focused on business. The door finally opened, and a shadow fell across the polished floor. Maya stood, turning with her practiced, professional smile, ready to meet the ruthless genius behind Meridian Technologies. Her smile fractured instantly. Her breath hitched, catching painfully in her throat as her eyes collided with his. It was Elias. He was even more devastatingly handsome in the power suit than he had been in the dim light of the jazz club. His hair was slightly longer, his jaw sharper, and his eyes, Those intensely blue eyes, which had held profound sadness that night, now held a cold, unwavering shock that mirrored her own. He wasn't just Elias. He was Elias Thorne, the billionaire founder and CEO of the company she now worked for. Maya's carefully constructed composure vanished. Her professionalism dissolved into a silent, raw panic. She couldn't speak, couldn't move, acutely aware of the expensive blazer now failing to conceal the slight, telltale swell of her stomach. Elias, recovering quickly, masked his shock with an expression of icy control that was worse than anger. "You," he stated, his voice a low, dangerous rumble that commanded the expansive room. It wasn't a question. He stalked around the desk, stopping just inches from her, trapping her in a web of memory and terrifying present. "You're the new assistant. What is your name?" He knew her name. He just wanted to hear her say it, to confirm the impossible coincidence that had just landed the consequence of his most vulnerable night directly under his command. The tension was suffocating. Maya finally managed to whisper her name, her eyes darting toward the door. A desperate, futile gesture of escape. "Maya," Elias repeated, the name tasting like a private, painful memory on his lips. He moved closer, leaning in so his voice was barely audible above the hum of the air conditioning. "Do you have any idea how long I've been looking for you?" The question wasn't accusatory. It was raw, desperate, and utterly sincere. Elias revealed the real twist. That night had been far more significant to him than a casual hookup. He wasn't some playboy. He had been drowning in the fallout of a family crisis. A massive public failure in his personal life that had left him feeling utterly alone and adrift. Maya, the stranger who offered kindness and raw honesty, had been his anchor, his brief glimpse of hope. "You left that note. Thank you for the honesty. You were the most honest thing that happened to me in years," he confessed, his voice tight with controlled emotion. "I went back to that club every night for a month. I had my security team track every taxi that left the building. I gave up a crucial trip to Asia, paralyzed by the need to find you. That night wasn't just sex, Maya. It was everything." Maya felt a wave of dizzying heat. The stranger she tried to protect from reality had been searching for her, desperately, and she had walked right back into his life, pregnant with his child. "Why are you here?" he demanded, his eyes piercing through her professional facade. He didn't wait for an answer, his gaze suddenly dropping, sweeping over her body with an intensity that caused her heart to race. He noticed the slight hesitation in her posture, the way she instinctively wrapped her arms across her midsection. His focus sharpened, landing on the tightly buttoned blazer. The shock returned, colder and deeper this time, mixed with sudden, profound suspicion. He didn't know what she was hiding, but he knew she was hiding something important. The office became a labyrinth of emotional landmines. Elias insisted Maya work from his private, adjoining office, a move she knew was less about administrative convenience and more about keeping her under his constant, suffocating surveillance. The proximity made hiding the baby an impossible task. At 6 months, her bump was undeniable to anyone paying attention. Maya developed a repertoire of defensive maneuvers, staying seated during meetings, placing her enormous handbag strategically on her lap, constantly leaning over her desk, and relying on oversized corporate mugs to block the view. The pressure was exhausting, both physically and emotionally. Elias was hyper-aware of her every movement. He watched her skip the morning coffee, the way she ate only specific, bland foods, and the subtle shift in her center of gravity. He bombarded her with questions about her past, trying to figure out why she was running and who she was running from. One afternoon, disaster struck. Maya bent quickly to retrieve a dropped pen, and the movement pulled her blazer tight, clearly outlining the gentle, round curve. Elias, who was standing across the desk, froze. His eyes locked onto her abdomen, his sophisticated demeanor momentarily replaced by a raw, startled vulnerability. He didn't speak. He simply reached out a hand, hovering inches from her, as if an invisible force field prevented him from touching her. "Maya," he began, his voice barely a breath. Before he could voice the question that hung heavy in the air, a chime signaled a video conference. Maya seized the reprieve, pulling her blazer back into place, her heart pounding a desperate rhythm. The secret was teetering on the edge, one wrong move away from total collapse, and the proximity of the man who was both her salvation and her ruin was becoming unbearable. Elias was relentless. He couldn't reconcile the fragile, warm woman he had met that night with the professional, guarded employee, now clearly pregnant, with what he assumed was another man's child. The betrayal of her secrecy hurt him more than her initial vanishing act. He finally cornered her late one evening, after the office was quiet. He didn't ask about the baby. He asked about the night they met. He needed to prove to her that his desperation to find her was real. "I didn't tell you that night, but my twin sister had just died," he admitted, his voice rough with remembered pain, finally exposing the depth of his vulnerability. "She was everything to me. I was supposed to give the eulogy the next day, and I couldn't write it, couldn't breathe. I was completely broken, sitting in that club, feeling like the world was ending. You walked in and you asked me about the history of the music, not the history of my company. You saw me, not my net worth. You saved me, Maya." This profound confession cracked Maya's own reserve. She hadn't just abandoned a wealthy stranger. She had abandoned a grieving man whose heart she'd unintentionally captured. She saw the profound loneliness behind his ruthless business facade. "I'm sorry, Elias," she whispered, her eyes welling up. "I had no idea." "Of course you didn't," he countered gently. "But the woman who gave me that night, the woman who wrote me that note about honesty, she wouldn't hide this from me." His gaze dropped to her stomach, the question now explicitly silent but deafeningly clear. "Why, Maya? If you needed support, why take a job under me instead of coming to me for help?" She swallowed, realizing she had to tell him. But before the truth could pass her lips, a sudden, sharp kick from the baby caused her to gasp and instinctively clutch her belly, betraying the secret in the most definitive way possible. The instinctive clasp of her hands over her stomach told Elias everything he needed to know. The realization that the consequence of his most honest night was growing inside the woman he'd been searching for hit him with the force of a physical blow. He didn't explode. He went unnervingly quiet, the silence more terrifying than any shouting match. Instead of a confrontation, he issued a command, wrapped in a question. "We're going to dinner tonight, not as boss and assistant, as people who have things to discuss." The dinner was tense, held in a secluded corner of a quiet restaurant far from the city center. Elias was protective, ordering for her and keeping a constant, careful watch. He avoided discussing the pregnancy, focusing instead on rebuilding the connection they'd shared that single night. They talked about books, music, and the simple things they missed in their high-pressure lives. "I still have your note," he admitted, his eyes softening. "It's in my wallet. I read it every day." Maya felt the emotional walls she'd built start to crumble. He wasn't the cold air she assumed, and his pursuit hadn't been a casual search. It had been driven by profound need. She finally opened up about her fear. The shame of being pregnant and alone, the financial pressure, and the reason she had left that morning. "It was perfect," she confessed, "and I was terrified of ruining it by introducing you to my messy, real life. It felt better to leave you with a good memory." He reached across the table, his hand covering hers, a familiar, comforting gesture. "There are no messy lives, Maya, just messy circumstances. But this baby is not a circumstance. This is a person, and you and I are already connected permanently. Why didn't you tell me?" His eyes held no judgment, only a deep, aching need for honesty. The question hung in the air, heavy with all the unspoken months of missed opportunities, and Maya finally knew he was ready to hear the truth. The truce established at dinner lasted less than 48 hours. The pressure of maintaining the pretense while navigating the emotional minefield of working for the baby's father became overwhelming. It happened during a crucial board meeting. Maya, already exhausted and stressed, stood to hand Elias a revised projection report. A sudden, sharp dizzy spell hit her. The glass-walled room tilted, the faces of the stern board members swam, and the mahogany desk rushed toward her. She collapsed, the sound of the report scattering across the floor like scattered gunfire. Elias was across the room in an instant, his corporate mask tearing away to reveal stark, primal fear. He didn't call her Maya or Clara. He simply shouted, "Call an ambulance! Now!" He scooped her up, his movements protective and swift, carrying her through the shocked, silent office and down to his waiting car. At the hospital, after the doctors confirmed she and the baby were fine, the truth was officially unveiled. A nurse innocently asked Elias, "Is this your first time in the delivery ward, Dad?" Elias stared at the nurse, then at Maya, who was lying pale and defeated on the bed. His eyes darted to the ultrasound image taped near her chart, showing the distinct profile of a 6-month-old fetus. He recognized the shape immediately, his child. He dismissed the nurse with a clipped nod and closed the door. He didn't shout. He didn't rage. He simply walked to the window, his back rigid. "A secret baby," he stated, his voice dangerously low, infused with hurt and disbelief. "All this time you were working under me, hiding my child. You left me once because you wanted perfection. Did you really think concealing our baby would keep this life perfect?" He turned, his eyes blazing with a protective ferocity she hadn't seen before. "I searched for you for months. I nearly went mad. Now I find you, and you're carrying my son or daughter. You will not shut me out of this life, Maya. You can hate me, you can quit, but you will share this baby with me." The hospital room became the battleground. Maya, recovering but firm, pushed back against Elias's fierce, possessive demand for involvement. "You don't get to parachute into this life and claim ownership just because you're the father and a billionaire," she fired back, her voice shaking but resolute. "I made this choice alone. You're my boss. You're a constant reminder of the night I risked everything. I won't raise a child in the shadow of a corporate agreement or an employee contract." Elias stood over her, his expression a mixture of devastation and rigid resolve. "I am not offering you a contract, Maya. I am offering you my life. I haven't been honest with you either. My sister's death was tied up in a custody battle with her ex-husband over my nephew, and she lost. I saw the system destroy her. I swore I would never let that happen to my own child." He ran a hand through his hair, revealing the exhaustion that lay beneath his polished exterior. "That night was me trying to find something real before I lost everything. I don't want to be your boss. I want to be his father. I want to be your partner. The job is a means to an end. The baby is my family." He gave her a choice, but it came with an ultimatum. "I am dissolving the employment relationship today. You can keep your old salary until after the baby is born, and you can live anywhere you want. But I will be a father. We will not be strangers raising a child in 2 different worlds. You either accept my full involvement, or you prepare for a legal fight that neither of us wants." The harshness of his ultimatum was softened by the profound fear in his eyes. He wasn't trying to control her. He was terrified of losing the second chance she represented. Maya realized the choice wasn't about who she would choose, but whether she could trust the vulnerable man beneath the CEO's suit. Maya didn't need time. She needed proof of commitment beyond the threat of a lawsuit. She saw the true, desperate Elias in the hospital room, the grieving brother, the terrified father. She looked at him, her gaze clear, shedding the last vestiges of fear and resentment. "I choose us, Elias, but you have to prove that Elias Thorne, the man in the jazz club, exists beyond the walls of Meridian Technologies." Elias didn't hesitate. He took her hands, his thumb tracing the subtle swelling of her wrist. "No more walls, Maya." He pulled a small, velvet box from his pocket. Inside wasn't a ring, but a delicate, antique silver music box. He wound the key, and a soft, melancholic jazz tune, the exact melody that had played the night they met, filled the sterile hospital room. "This is the music that brought us together, not the money that almost tore us apart. This is my promise." Elias's tangible response was immediate and absolute. Within 24 hours, he officially stepped back from the CEO role, naming his most trusted COO as his temporary replacement. He spent the next month focusing entirely on Maya and the baby. He sold the penthouse, the site of their fateful night, and bought a home that felt like a sanctuary, not a corporate cage. He read every pregnancy book, attended every prenatal class, and treated Maya not as an employee or a fragile patient, but as the strong, fiercely independent woman he respected. The boss-slash-employee dynamic evaporated completely, replaced by a deep, honest partnership forged in vulnerability and shared purpose. On a rainy autumn afternoon, their son, Leo, was born. Elias was there, tearful and steadfast, holding Maya's hand and witnessing the rebirth of their future. Years later, they sat together on the porch of their new home, watching their son, Leo, chase butterflies in the garden. Maya leaned her head against Elias's shoulder. "I still can't believe I left you that night," Maya murmured. "And I still can't believe I found you," Elias countered, kissing her hair. "You gave me the greatest risk and the greatest reward. You taught me that the most perfect memories are the ones that get messy." Like and subscribe for more videos like this.